Okay, Ralph, this is the thing that's been bugging me the whole time. It's been bugging me for years, maybe for decades. It's bad when the Americans do it, but it's okay when the Europeans do it. Why is that, Ralph? And we see it again this week. This last week, chat controller. Chat control. That is, there's a law now in Europe, and I'm not sure. There's a lot of things, fuzzy things about the details, so I'm not exactly sure about it. But it's been pushed through European Parliament that all through Europe, they will, via the tech companies, monitor, surveil all communications done by phone on message services. So like, in chat services, in, Facebook messages, whatever, all these messages, Telegram, all these message services will be forced before your chat, before your message to, a loved one, a personal, a business person, whatever, before that is encrypted, it will be scanned for content that the government does not want. In this case, pedophile content. So the whole thing is about chasing pedophiles. It's about child pornography and things like that. So if your chat has any kind of child pornography on it, it'll be scanned. It'll be sent to the government. The government will be aware of it before it's encrypted and sent. So, and this is without any suspicion of you. You don't need to go to a judge and say, "Judge, I want to, scan this guy's personal thing because I think he's a pedophile." You don't have to do that. It's blanket. Everyone will be surveilled, will be scanned like that. There are some details of it that I don't quite understand. I'm not sure if it's actually up and running. I'm not sure. I think a lot of people will try to stop it, and which will be a good thing. It may not even get through in the end. But right now, it looks like that's what's happening. And they've tried it several times. And this is, I think, the third time, something like that, to get it through. And it's gone through. And so, imagine if Trump did that. If Trump had something like that in America, all hell would break loose. Congress would stop him. No, that would not be possible. In fact, I remember back when Bush Jr. Signed the Patriot Act into effect, and the Patriot Act loosened up some restrictions about what security services could do when there's a specific suspicion that some guy is involved in a terrorist activity, but that was, the Patriot Act was restricted in time. It was only up for a couple of years. It was meant to be taken down again. It meant to be temporary, and you still had judges involved, and it was still, I think the judges were secret. I'm not exactly sure. It was so long ago. I'm not sure on the details, but everyone was upset about it, and in European papers too. We read about, the end of civil rights in America. And people were saying this is the beginning of a fascist state. And this was under George Bush. Of course, it was all nonsense. But everyone reacted. They kind of overreacted, but they reacted as, in a way, as you should react to something like that. And when Obama, did the NSA spying, everyone was it was insane that everyone just thought America was now the fascist state. But when Europe does it, it's okay. No one's upset about it. It's okay. This is what you're supposed. This is good for us. This is good. There are some people who are complaining about it. It is something of a controversy, but it's not really much of a controversy. It's nothing is really going to happen. And I've seen this again and again and again. A couple of weeks ago, or just 1 or 2 weeks ago, there was a big controversy. There were riots in the streets. Okay, there were people trying to block a controversial extreme right party from a big annual meeting, and so these activists went out into the streets and tried to block the highways, and they beat up a couple of conservative podcasters or journalists, and it was one of those things that happened very often in Germany. there's always controversial demonstrations on the streets. When you have a pro-Palestinian demonstration, there are a lot of people arrested for fighting with the police or not obeying police orders. There are videos in the internet, with confrontations with police. A lot of these riot police wear masks like the ICE does, in America. And so it's just like in America, the violence on the streets is very much like in America. Maybe I don't think there's been any killings, but there is violence and there are people just really going to the streets. But you don't really see it much. It's kind of normal. When that happens in America, then it's the end of the world. Then there's, everyone is on the streets. It's social unrest. But in Europe, it's okay. It's just kind of a normal thing. It's accepted, When Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, when he was running for re-election, he basically promised to do everything about migration that Trump promised to do. He promised to have more deportations. He promised to close the borders. But no one called him a fascist. I think maybe one guy called him a fascist, or one party. Then they apologized for it. The extreme leftist party called him a fascist, and they immediately apologized for it. But it was not, the newspapers did not call him a fascist and a racist for it. And it was not the end of a democracy. And he was not a king. There are no anti-king protests. They can do that. It's okay to do that. If the Europeans do it. Back when they were discussing the tariffs, that Trump had these tariffs, everyone in Europe, and we're talking about real economists, they would go on TV and say, these tariffs will never work. They've never in history have tariffs worked. But they all neglected to say that Europe works with massive tariffs across the board. And you want to import a car from America to Europe, you're hit with tariffs that can go up to almost 50%. It's huge. If you put it, it's like 30%. No, 40%, something like that. It goes up really high depending on what kind of tariffs, what kind of cars, and how you import them. They're really high, but no one mentioned that because it's okay if Europe does it. When they do it, it's not a problem. If the U.S. does it, that's the end of democracy. A couple of weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, this just astounded me. The European Union decided that they're going to build detention centers for migrants that they're deporting outside of Europe. Like in Africa, they talked about maybe Uzbekistan. They talked about Ghana. I think they talked about Ethiopia, I don't know, a couple of other countries. They haven't done it yet, but they're in negotiations with African countries to build prisons for these migrants. They can be held up to 24 months. That's 2 years. In these detention centers run by African countries, which are not well known for human rights, right? That's not their reputation. And it's okay. It's no problem. If Trump were to do that. That would be that, and when Trump deported people to El Salvador. That was a huge thing. It was gigantic. When Bush deported real, actual terrorists, not just illegal immigrants, actual terrorists seized in combat to Guantanamo. That was this huge thing that you can, that's getting around civil rights and things. But when Europe does it, it's okay. That's one of those things, if you ask me, why do I defend America when it's so indefensible? It's because I live in Europe and I see that Europe does exactly the same things. They profit from everything America does, and yet they complain constantly about America with a holier than thou attitude, as if everything that they do is perfect. And everything that America does, even though it's the exact same thing, is evil. That's why I always end up defending things that America does, even Trump, that if I were in America, I would probably complain about. I would probably be against Trump, deporting whatever, But since I'm in Europe and I see this incredible hypocrisy, I I just think no, America is doing the right thing. It's fine, and it's you Europeans, you're not helping the world at all. You're not really doing anything that is improving anything. You're doing the same things that we're doing. All you're doing is pretending to be the better person. All you're doing is pretending to be the European Jesus Christ, and it's just pretending. It's true that Trump, says what he thinks, right? He uses words like shithole countries, and he calls journalists stupid or dummies. He says what he thinks. And the Europeans don't do that. They're very sophisticated, and they say everything they say, they put in a language that sounds very moral and dignified and wonderful, even though it's exactly the same thing. But deep in their hearts, they wish they could say their own mind. They wish they could say what they really think. They're dying to say, shithole countries when they fly to some place in Africa, or and they have to pretend that everything is we're all just brothers and sisters here, and then they return to Germany in this incredible luxury and the money and the privilege that they have. They're dying to take words like shithole countries in their mouths, and to call their enemies dummies and stupid. But they can't, of course. Only Trump can do that. Well, so now you know.